Carlton King, the former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy podcast, the show which shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, but that goes beyond that into the world of geopolitics. And this is a continuation of 2 episodes I've already had with Sam, and frankly, her struggle to stay alive. This is episode 3. I mean, this is totally mind-blowing for me and unique because we've never done this before on the show. But I believe that her story needed airing and that we needed to put it all together in small packages so you could listen and truly grasp what Sam was having to deal with. So here we are again. I'm not going to guillotine Sam at 3. If it takes another episode, we'll do it. But I just want to make sure you understand, in this modern world, how we can come across a situation where seemingly help is not where it should be, because we make assumptions that it is. I'm not going to say much more. I'm going to welcome Sam again. Hi, Sam. Nice to see you again this morning.
Hi, nice to see you again.
So here we are. I'm just going to backtrack for listeners. In 1 and 2, if you haven't listened to 1 or 2, please go back and listen to episode 1 and episode 2 of Sam from the last 2 weeks. This is now episode 3, as I've said. So to get the best and tightest understanding, listen to them and then come back in. Obviously, leave yourself space, but come back in. So just to backtrack, so basically, we are now at a situation where you went to the States. The operation he tried to do, I'm not calling down any medic. I'm not a professional in that domain, in that theatre at all, so I can't do that. But what we found was that the aftercare was poor because you weren't set up for the US system. It cost you basically more than $500,000, believe it or not. Good people of the UK had put their money themselves on the line to get that for you. You came back and you felt a failure because you knew straight away that the operation hadn't worked, where your head shouldn't move, your neck was dislocating, you're having to pop your neck back in. I mean, unbelievable. You got a diagnosis from another specialist closer to home in Barcelona who give you a shock assessment.
Yeah.
Basically saying your life was nigh at an end if you didn't do something.
Yeah, he told me 8 to 10 weeks to live.
8 to 10 weeks to live. So let's grasp that, listeners. 8 to 10 weeks to live. You were what, 30 odd at the time? 30?
I just turned 30 that month, yeah.
30. 8 to
and
10
I had
weeks.
a 6 and 7-year-old single mum, so yeah.
Single mother, 6 and 7-year-old, had been a high flyer, had been basically writing your own column, best-selling international author, had 2 practices, I think, running.
Yeah, private practices as a psychotherapist.
That's a psychotherapist. It was all happening. Then an accident happened. You didn't realise that accident, that articulated lorry, had changed your life.
Not as much as it did now, no.
You didn't realise it. And then you think, okay, so now it has changed my life. I understand it. So now I'm going to go down the legal route and claim what's mine, which people do just for whiplash, never mind anything else. and that avenue stymied. So
Yeah.
can I look at that avenue? Are you able to speak about that avenue? And then we'll go back to the medical. Are you able to speak about the court case? Or?
I think it's a bit of a grey area, but yeah, I mean, just ask away, and then if there's anything that I don't feel comfortable with or I'm a bit unsure about, I'll just say. So yeah.
The reason why I'm saying that, because I think with the right amount of money, you may have been able to turn around, and even though the second operations weren't successful, maybe you would have been able to turn it around if you'd have got what the insurance companies should have got you.
Oh gosh, yeah, without a doubt.
All right. So can you tell me how that process worked?
Yeah, so obviously, as you said, I lost my career, became very disabled physically, and at that point, well, my brain stem's compressed, so there was cognitive issues. Because of the lack of income, I went for a no-win, no-fee legal team. And when you go for a no-win, no-fee legal team, you need the insurance to cover them. So the insurance will cover them if there's a 51% chance of you winning the case in, I think it's a few legal people's perspectives, Now, there's not every company offers this, not every lawyer offers this. And so you're somewhat limited. However, I felt that I was lucky to find a lawyer who had an understanding of the genetic condition that I have, which leads me, predisposed to injury, or a worse injury, shall we say. We've been going through that process for a number of years now, since my first surgery, when the surgeon said this was caused by a trauma. I've been working on these bodies for nearly 30 years and with your conditions, and this was a trauma-caused incident. And we looked back and realised that all of my symptoms had culminated and appeared since this incident. So that was all going just, as it does really, along in the background, and just a bit of hope. But me being a very realistic person, didn't put too much on it. It had been caught on camera. There was no no option for them to deny liability or anything like that. It was more a case of this argument of, well, she's got this genetic condition, so would she have ended up this way anyway? The thing being that my genetics are not very easy to understand. They're a rare type of a subtype. I won't go into that, but to explain it more easily, my mum and my older brother have the exact same genetic anomaly, and they're both very, very active people, very, very active people. And that was how my life was. I had aches and pains, but I was very active. It never stopped me as such. So the assumption was that everything would be okay with the case. But I think as it come down to it more recently, you find that when you're up against a big corporation who've got all the resources and all the, access to finances, etc., I was becoming more and more censored in what I felt I could and couldn't say, which made it really difficult, because a lot of what I do, sharing my story online, is about being authentic. And then more recently, I kind of got backed into a bit of a corner where, now this is where I have to dance around my words a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I got backed into a corner where it was felt that for this short time, there was a risk of my case being a little bit, around that 50% mark. And because of that, I was advised to accept an offer that was on the table that was not even 5% of the cost we've had to pay so far, never mind the loss of my career and my future and everything else. But yeah, the offer was accepted. It would not make a difference very much to my life whatsoever. And the opposition, regardless, just said, we're not giving it you. What are you going to do? So
hold on. So what you're saying is you accepted an offer, and did that end all the liability if you accepted the offer first thing?
No, they're liable. But what happened was Now, forgive me because I'm not legal.
All right, what I
And I
mean
have been
is, let me make it clearer because that's maybe how I set the question.
Okay.
Did it end all their liability for future cases? Example, you couldn't take a case against them in the future. You accepted this and that was it. Or was it still open for you to come back at them in the future?
At present, we're in a grey area because they have refused, which is against the law, to release the funds.
Right.
It's a bit of a tricky one. There's not many, if any, experiences of this in the books.
But did you sign a paper that said...
I've not signed anything.
So you've not signed any non-disclosure, nothing that you can come back at them, anything like that? Nothing?
No.
Right,
No.
so the case potentially is still open then. So, but what they've said is you made that agreement, and then they said, from what you're saying to me, we will not pay it you anyway. Basically, take it out of my nose. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, they're saying that the offer was on the table for that. This offer, because it was so small, was on the table since I think about 2019. So what they're trying to claim back now is if you were going to accept that offer, you should have accepted it then, which legally is not true. I mean, they left it on the table. But therefore, we would like to claim all of our legal costs from that date onwards against you and offset it against what you're claiming from us. But they don't have legal rights to do that. So, yeah.
So again, really, in reality, you need a top-level legal team that would be able to come back at the company and therefore can still keep going.
Possibly. It's very tricky.
I mean, you need legal minds
these people
to look
are
at
watching.
it, obviously. You need legal minds to look at it.
And they're watching everything that I do. So, do you know, they will listen to this, and whatever information I give can be weaponized as such. So yeah.
That's why I'm just going to stop it there. But I just want to put it out there that if there's somebody in the legal field with the capacity and capability to do pro bono for somebody who's been dealt a terrible hand, that maybe they might want to look into that. If you're happy for that to be the case. So I don't want to touch further on the legal, but I want to put it out there so people can understand that part of it and why that's been problematic for you in getting the best treatment, the correct treatment that you would or could have had. So let's leave the legal avenue there purely and simply because it's a minefield for you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And let's go back into the medical aspect. So you've now got 10 days from the Spanish doctor. Where do you go from there? How do you stand up and say, right, this is what I'm going to do? Can you explain that?
Well, what had actually happened is that 8 to 10 weeks was prior to the other surgeries. So that's why I was rushed to get all of the funds and I ended up going to Washington. But I did go back to Barcelona because Barcelona, compared to England, they have just an incredible set of imaging machines. So they can really see on video and everything what's happening inside of my body in various positions. So I did go back to Barcelona. And at this point, I'd had the multiple surgeries in Washington. It was around a year later. And I went over there with a friend and I had a feeling, like you say, that something was off. But until I got there, I wasn't sure how much something was off. And the doctor did all of the imaging and repeated to me, this is a bad situation. We're looking at you requiring restabilization. So basically them rebuilding and applying titanium rods and or my ribs into my spinal area to reinforce my spine, to straighten it out where it's bending underneath the weight of the hardware, and various other things to reduce the pressure off my brainstem. And the outcome of that would be a complete loss of all movement from my skull down to my pelvis. So I would just be arms and legs, in essence, in my mind. And he reaffirmed to us just how important that was that I had that done. And gosh, I mean, that was a real blow that day because we've been through so much. And I went there with a friend and there was a part of, let's just get these scans out of the way. And put my head so far in the sand that I'd forgotten, not forgotten, but, managed to almost trick myself into reducing how big this was going to be.
So how well were you moving at this time when you went to Barcelona? How well?
By this stage, so I'd had an improvement for a while after my surgeries. But I still knew that there was movement that should not be happening. So I knew that there was, every time I manipulate these joints back into place, it shouldn't be moving. I'm damaging the job that's been done. Yeah. So I managed the Barcelona flight. It's a short flight. I was upright, but every opportunity I was lying down. I mean, I was lying down in the aisle of the aeroplane.
Oh.
Yeah. Same with the, like the black cabs and everything to get from one place to the other. And by this point, we knew the area, so it was fairly easy.
Oh,
I had a wheelchair.
I was going to, right, sorry. Yeah, wheelchair, I was going to say, yeah.
I have wheelchair and a walker, crutches, walking stick. I still, depending on the day or one moment to the next, I still need them.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that point, absolutely, a lot of the time was lay flat. I had to lay flat to reduce the symptoms, and the pressures on my friend as well, because she'd experienced me in bad positions, but I'd always been with family when I'd gone here, and I just didn't want to take the children this time. I needed them to stay home. So yeah, a lot of the time there we were lay flat, apart from we had a little trip out to the is it Familiar?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I'm not a particularly religious person. I was a little bit angry with whatever powers that might be, but went and lit a candle and had a prayer and hoped that might swing things in my favour. And then the next morning I went to the appointment, and we were supposed to stay another night for me to rest, but we got straight in the taxi from that appointment, never went back to the hotel. We just got on the next plane home. I was just broken.
So, I mean, you've heard this. He's given you this diagnosis. He said every part of you needs to be basically scaffolded. Am I sort of making it trivial, or is that correct?
No, that's the case. So they would basically cut open some of the front and the back of, so the front of my neck and the back of my whole spine, and gradually over multiple surgeries, because I think now since then there's been one person who's been through something where they've had to do the whole spine in America. But yeah, very gradually over multiple surgeries, work towards having me lose all movement in my spine. And each surgery comes with incredible risks. I mean, they're working with your spine, your spinal cord, and they're stretching it every time. So
So when they're putting this scaffolding in, this titanium in your body to basically support the spine, basically that's it. I'm seeing it. Tell me if I'm right, because I'm trying to give listeners the view. And that's done. What can you give me an idea of pain?
When you've experienced pain long term, it becomes a completely different scale.
Good point.
I very much struggle with that question, but I have unbearable and bearable. Do you know, it's if it's bearable, fine. If it's not, it's not. But with this surgery, they are supposed to put you in a coma afterwards, a medically induced one, because the pain is too much for the body to handle.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they couldn't do that in my case. So it was insane.
Right, they couldn't do it because of they found out the situation you had in terms of your tolerance.
Yeah, and it weren't tolerance, you see. Some people do think that it's not tolerance, because I wasn't on insane medication till I woke up from my first surgeries, and that's been a battle of its own. But it was because I metabolise things very differently to other people. There's something in my genes that mean that when a drug hits my body just gets rid of it really, really fast.
Right. So it's not tolerance of it. It just doesn't slip into your stream as such.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And it just bypasses through my body. And it's the same with a lot of anesthetics as well. So it was insane, because I'm in this position where you're supposed to be comatose to get through the immense pain unconscious. and, you know, the first few days, and then gradually be brought round and learn to walk and talk and move again. And I'm in a position where I can't have that. And I also can't have the benefits of much analgesia. Do you know, they could throw it all at me. It was not taking any effect in my body. So I was scared to continue living, and I was scared to go to sleep because
you're scared to have the
I
operations.
thought the pain would kill me. Yeah. And I thought the pain would kill me, but I was also tussling between this. I don't think I can live like this. It was.
Did you think of giving up?
Oh gosh, yeah. I thought of it. I planned it.
You planned it?
Yeah.
So basically, that's like what that doctor had said to you earlier on when we spoke about it in one talk about your euthanasia. So you planned it.
I planned it.
What's bringing you away from it? Your children?
Oh, at that point, no. And
right,
I love my children dearly, but what happens is you're looking at them and you're thinking, gosh, like there's obviously genetic powers at play in this. They're my babies. They are therefore at risk. But I'm also thinking, do they want to be looking at me and potentially seeing the future? And is this ever going to get better? And I'm being told I'm going to be in this amount of pain for the rest of my life. No let up, not for 5 minutes. And that was true. I'm still in that kind of pain. So the concept of this forever is overwhelming at times, absolutely. But what got me through at that point was the belief that I couldn't let anybody else suffer in the way I had, and in particular my children. So there was the fear of, you know, I'm just learning about this condition. I'm just learning that the accident had its involvement. And it tipped me into that scale, you know, where I would have been able to continue a normal life otherwise. So I'm thinking to myself, what if something happens to my children and they can't access care down the line? I am the only person who understands that and who can fight for them. And that was what held me on, because I felt that I was holding everybody back, and the dynamics in your every relationship, friendship, you know, within your family as well, completely changes when they become your carer. So I felt that I would be freeing them if I wasn't around, but that if I wasn't around, who would fight for them to stop them going through this path if something happens to them? And that's what I held on to.
Did any of your children put it to you that this might happen to me?
Yes. Yeah. So in the years prior, now they both get into an age now. I mean, we're talking 6 and 7 back then. They're 12 and 13, and they've been through so much. They're very emotionally mature. So I do hold back a little bit now from talking about them, because I think that's their place. However, I've got the permission on certain things. So yes, one of my children, when they were younger, went through multiple, so we would be playing on the floor with toys and lean down, and the elbow would dislocate or fracture. Now this happens to the point where me and the father would be going up to the hospital, say in a month, at least 5 times. So we got questioned, we got questioned separately on potential injury. Why is this happening?
Right, so they think
we didn't have answers back then.
You're damaging them, right?
Yeah, are you hurting them? Is X person hurting them? Do you know? But this had happened in various circumstances, and we'd also sat there and, do you know, it might have happened with the auntie, it might have happened with the nana. So there were no concern whatsoever with regards to that in our minds. But at the time we were told, young children sometimes have these weak joints, and it was accepted. But as I got this diagnosis, I started to think, oh my gosh, that was a sign. Does this mean I've passed it on? So they both would ask me, is this what's going to happen? Is this what's going to happen to one another, feeling loss of me and each other? And as 2 very different children, those answers have to be given differently.
Yeah. Is there a mental guilt with you in terms of that?
Not with me. I mean, gosh, I still tussle with the fact that I can't have another child. I am incredibly broody, and I was made to have children and be a therapist, and both of those two things were taken from me. And that is my biggest grief, apart from the pain, those are my biggest griefs. And then when I do consider that, I'm like, well, obviously my body couldn't manage that anymore. But I would also have that consideration of genetics, But then I know more about it now. I understand that the other people in my family with this genetic anomaly, one's a farmer and the other looks after children 24/7 who are younger than my own. So they're very, very active, and both a lot older than me. So yeah, I don't have that guilt, but I do think throughout the generations of my family, there's a lot of, did we pass this on? Did we pass this on? And I don't think we need to be labeling that kind of thing. Nobody would ever do that intentionally.
No, absolutely, but it's just the way the mind plays sometimes. But obviously, because you're a therapist and because you understood that field, because you've studied it to a high degree, you obviously can probably talk yourself out of that. But I guess for some people, they couldn't. Yeah. That's a better word, rationalize, exactly.
And don't get me wrong, like when I am, when it gets on top of me, because it gets on top of you, and then you have to kind of like feel sorry for yourself or take a paddle in the pity pool, I call it. But I can only paddle. I'm not going for a swim. And then after a day or so, I'm back out and I'm carrying on, because you don't have a choice. And life's beautiful, that I'm not going to waste it. But yes, I do. It crosses my mind that, my gosh, I have lost. My biggest guilt is now half of their life has been spent saving mummy. They are known as Safe Samantha's children. They are known as, it's how, gosh, don't you look like your mum? How's your mum? I hope you're looking after her. And I don't want them to have that responsibility. I didn't want them to be carers. And also to have such an awareness of the medication around us and the effects of that as well. They've been through a lot. That's where my guilt lies.
This is something that I wanted to touch on, because first, you've come back from Barcelona. You're broken, yeah. But the sensibility that you've just shown now in discussing it is, I guess, what got you through to move on. But that's kind of sounds highly rationalized when you use that word. What I'd like for you to do is to sort of set the scene about how you then said to yourself, I'm back from Barcelona, what's my next move? How, like planning a campaign, a military campaign, what's your next move? How did you figure out what is that going to be?
So it was coming up to Christmas in 2018. And as I say, we're in Barcelona, and I got this information and flew immediately back home. And I remember being on the flight back with my friend, and I was like, initially looking for a bar in the airport, I need a drink. I need to try and get my head around this somehow. What am I going to tell my family? How am I going to do this? And me and my friend, sure she won't mind me naming it, Danielle, we sat there for some time, and I went into this kind of almost denial thing where I just couldn't talk about it. And she's like, Sam, you're gonna die, because this isn't, how would you ever afford all of those surgeries? This is going to be impossible. And are you well enough to do this again? And is your body even strong enough after everything it's been through? And I couldn't speak. I think I was probably a bit snappy on the way home, and silent and crying and all over the place. I actually went, I never told anybody this. I actually went and stayed in a local B&B and never told anybody that I'd come home, and asked her not to tell anybody, because I just needed time to digest. And then I think I went up to my parents and told them what I'd been told. And then they went into denial. It was, well, there's a lot of money to be earned from this. And this was something that's always at the forefront of our mind. You're paying a lot of money. So there's a financial almost benefit to the diagnosis to some of these people. So this was something that we had to consider at all times and get multiple perspectives on what was happening off various doctors, which all cost a lot of money and all took a lot of time. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, that outcome was reinforced a number of times.
So, sorry, just to break in. So part of your denial was that, and your parents said it, that, oh, maybe they're just making it up just to make money. Is that what was kind of said?
Yeah, there's this line of, there's a financial benefit for these guys. What if, and I'm thinking, yeah, but I know how I feel. Like, I know what's happening here. But I also couldn't face that life, that potential future. So it's yeah, absolutely. Every potential way out of it that we could think of. But I guess the more they pushed that way, the more I went on to the realistic, like, no, listen, I know my body. This is not something I can face, but something's got to be done to manage the immediate risk. And
can you starkly say that immediate risk? Is your head falling off? Or I don't want to make it, what is the immediate risk?
So this now depends on which country you're in and which doctor you're speaking to, as the words that they like to use. In England, they don't like the term internal decapitation. Other countries, strangely, do like the term. And that was what was said to me, was that, look at this, your skull is sliding, your brainstem, my brain is being pulled currently down out of my skull into my neck area.
Right.
So my brainstem gets compressed depending upon the position that my body's in. And I had 95% disability index of my brainstem, so that was quite a severe warning sign. All my old symptoms were coming back, paralysis, dystonia, loss of control of parts of my body, losing words, forgetting my children's name. Sorry, may I ask
what dystonia is?
Dystonia is where you get jerking of your body. Right. It presents differently in different people, but generally a loss of control of a limb or your neck or whatever part, where you'll see people maybe the body goes into spasm and they might be jerking.
So is that why you wore the neck brace all the time, so your neck wouldn't move?
Yeah, I kept the neck brace on day and night. And that was because despite all the hardware being there, it was still able to move. It was still collapsing above and below. And
it could just drop off and that'd be finished. Yeah,
if it slipped any further, I would decapitate internally. So whilst my head wouldn't fall off externally, it would go so far that it was already crushing my vertebral artery, multiple nerves. And that would be the end. So there was my children used to like sneak into my room at night. I was still trying to be independent, living at home with the kids, just the three of us, stupidly really. And they would be sneaking in to check I'm alive. Right. Yeah. And there was a very real risk that I wouldn't be. So
how did that make you feel, Sam, in terms of your children could find you one day?
Yeah, that was something that, when people ask this, and my brain just goes straight to the conversations that we had to have, and trying to draw it out and explain it in ways that each of them understood. When I was having a very bad day, it was rare I was on my own. People generally took a rota and checked in on me, despite me wanting my own space. I'm very, very lucky. But it was petrifying. I don't think there were words for it, and I'm not sure I ever allowed myself. There was this very heavy weight of, you cannot feel right now, because if you feel, you will break and you won't find the funds to get the surgery. I couldn't think about the surgery because that itself could break me. It felt inhumane, and the afterlife from it. It all, and I died as well following the surgery. Before the second surgery, I'd passed on, and I'd been through such crazy situations that the thought of going back to Washington alone, I couldn't have got on a plane. Like, there was no way. I couldn't do it. So there was a lot going on emotionally, as you can imagine.
So this is now 2019. So you come back 2018, Christmas into 2019. What allows you to live till now? What did you do?
Okay. I went online, and there are many communities for people with what's called CCI or AAI, which is the neck and the skull issues that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some which are combined with people who also have the genetic condition that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely, thousands of people. So all, like, you know, they've all had some sort of issue which has triggered it, a fall, a trip, you know, anything. But yeah, and it was them. I spoke to a number of them, and I was trying to find a surgeon who was just a fresh start. I was trying to find a surgeon, and I had the option of Barcelona. However, he'd not been operating for very long at that point. I've got a very complex body. He was also anxious about working on somebody else's job as such.
Right, okay.
You know, somebody else's, it's like almost like you know, you get a workman in and somebody's done half a job, they don't want to finish the rest of that job, right. Because, you know, and it was like that kind of scenario. And I found a girl who, honestly, she saved my life. She's in America, and I realised had very similar situations, many surgeries, though more than myself, at this point. And she was going to Arizona, and she'd announced she was going to Arizona, but she was being very quiet about who this doctor was. And I messaged her, and I managed to get it out of her. She put me in contact with him, or I found him and put myself in contact, I'm not quite sure. And I spoke to this man. Now, at this point, we had started fundraising again. People were very receptive to my situation and understanding that what I'd had done should have been a success, but my body was not responding how it should. And this time I went to a specialist who I can't name, in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, I spoke to him on a telephone call in the December of 2018. We're coming up to Christmas. We've just raised, I think it was about £170,000 at this point. And I'm thinking this should cover me for a little bit of a fix, you know, of my spine, that the worst part's done, so my life isn't at risk.
Yep.
I spoke to this man, and he immediately said, you know, like, I can see what's going on here. And I mean, your hardware's worn a hole through your skull, which I had suspected for some time, but I'd been told by doctors to use more positive language. And he said, come out, I need you out before Christmas. I need you out in the next 3 weeks, and I can fix this. Do you know, and he gave me hope.
But are you not frightened that he's a charlatan or something?
He works for the world-renowned hospitals.
Right,
so it was at the Mayo Clinic.
Right, okay, so you've done research on him and the likes here.
The thing about this guy was that whilst the other doctors around the world, and this is what was the swaying point for me, apart from what became his incredible personality and just an amazing man all around, was that the other doctors they were independent. So whilst they would be bringing the financial benefit to the hospital that they worked at, they would be benefiting mostly financially from the surgery. And so I needed an independent person's advice, and I'd had this in multiple places. Now, this surgeon had worked on very, very complex cases, but at the Mayo Clinic, they salaried. So he had no financial benefit from recommending surgery.
Right.
And that was the pushing point for me. I did refuse to go out over Christmas because I genuinely, by this stage, believed it was my last Christmas with Jensen and Brooke, my children. And I tried to just embrace every bit of Christmas, you know, just do whatever I could do to get through it with them and make memories with them. And we planned what we called my funeral, you know, my life celebration together. We wrote letters to each other. We just did so many things to try to make memories that would last. And then
How mobile
I
are you
got-
at this time? Are you just...
Oh, I'm living in a back bedroom at my mum and dad's house, and I feel that for the 2 years prior, really, at that point, I had been, the majority of my time was in that back bedroom. Yes, when I could, I would go back home because I still had my home down the road, and people were checking on me, but I'm in this back bedroom and I'm losing a lot of quality. So I would manage to be up. I would sit up in bed and speak to them for 10 minutes before they went to school, a certain 10 minutes. And then I would be unconscious all day until they came home from school. And at about 4:30, I would get up and I would be moved to sit with them in the living room or lie with them on the floor.
So your parents would move you around?
Yeah. Highly, highly medicated. And oh gosh, I mean, they put you on drugs in America, you come back to England, they don't do those kind of drugs here, and there's all of that as well. But yeah, so I'm not in a good way, and I probably had a broken hour with them a day. It became about quality.
The reason why I asked that, Sam, is that you speak about it matter of fact, but I think listeners need to understand the sort of life you're living. It isn't matter of fact.
Yeah.
It's very stilted and limited. And also, one question I want to ask, and tell me to butt out, did you become addicted to the narcotics that you were provided, particularly the US ones? I mean, tell me to butt out.
No, it's fine. Do you know, nobody's ever asked that. Yes, I did. And I still am. And there's many reasons for that. When I went to Washington, because they couldn't get me into this place of pain relief, and because I was in a hospital where we were probably a less desirable hospital, you know, not many locals would necessarily choose to go there. I didn't know that at the time, but that's where my surgeon was. I was given so many drugs that, oh gosh, I remember the nurse refusing to go home and sleeping by my bed on a sofa, crying, saying that I was going to overdose, that I was going to die. But
this is why I asked this question, because I noticed you spoke about oxy, I noticed you spoke about ketamine. I noticed you spoke, all of these are highly addictive narcotics. Yeah,
and I never... So prior to this, I mean, I'm all about functional health, functional medicine model, you know, as natural as can be. And so whilst I had, you know, backup of medications, and I had Oromorph and things like that before I went out to America, if I could manage and I wasn't in insane pain, I wouldn't take it. And I woke up on all of these drugs just through my veins. Just my veins were collapsing. Eventually they're going directly into my heart, through my toes. Just so many drugs. I mean, yeah, we've got list after list after list. And yeah, I did try to withdraw. That was the thing. So when I went into that point of coming back from Washington and thinking, right, okay, this is my time to try to live, I didn't want to be unconscious on medication all of the time. I wanted to remember. I didn't know whether some of my symptoms were medication or whether they were the compression, and I needed an element of control. So often I would lose control of time, lose a handle of time, you know, or I wouldn't know that we'd done something in the day, or my family would go out and they'd wheel me, and the next thing I'd know, I'd be really looking forward to it, just sitting on a beach somewhere, just whatever it was. Next thing I'd know, I'd be being put back in the car, and I'd just wake up crying, like, that time's been stolen from me. Why did you let me sleep? Do you know, like, why I need to make these memories now? But they couldn't keep me conscious. I was just not there. And then I would be forgetting so much, from my children's names through to whether I'd eaten, you know, whether I'd been fed just 10 minutes ago. So I was in a bad way, and I do speak matter-of-factly, I guess, sometimes to as a way of coping.
Yeah,
you know,
I can understand
almost
that.
detach myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, medication wise, so I tried to withdraw, and then realized that I needed this other surgery. And in England, I kept being told, well, I'm actually still considered as on palliative care.
Yeah.
So I kept being told, what's the point in you coming off them? You're going to be in pain forever. Take more. And I'm saying, like, this is oxy, morphine, ketamine. I can't take more and more of this. This is going to kill me. And I am now on just oxy. Because also I developed other conditions like thyroid problems, my adrenal gland, which is the gland in your body which manages stress and releases the cortisol within your body for you to cope with stress, you know, the fight, flight, freeze, that completely burned out in my body. It stopped working altogether, which leads, I mean, a person's dead if that happens. So I started being medicated on that fairly fast and supplementing that, and I've managed to heal these aspects of my body since my last surgery. But I am still going through a very, very slow process of weaning, because it's not just, I've got down to one set of drugs, the oxy, and I am on a quarter of what I was on this time last year. So it's been a heavy journey this past 12 months. But every time I reduce the medication dose, it seems to release more memories. So it's like the veil's being lifted on a lot of the traumas, and I've relived a lot of things. So it has to be done as a very slow process.
Understood.
But it's, oh gosh, I mean, addiction, wow, physically, mentally, it's hard. Yeah.
And you obviously had an operation at the Mayo Clinic then. How did that differ? And how did the care differ from what you had previously in Washington, D.C.?
Well, what happened was I got off that call from the Arizona surgeon, and I believed we'd raised enough to get me through. And we get to the week of Christmas, and I've been asking them for an invoice so that I can share it publicly so that people know what we're aiming at. And because I had international media following, you know, and people around the world following and supporting. So this bill comes.
Sorry, just came to my mind. Were you getting donations internationally as well?
Yeah, I mean, I still get. I was speaking to a lady in Germany last night, a lady in Mexico. I still have support worldwide, a lot of it. It's quite surprising. But yeah, donations, fundraisers, TV, radio, news. I lost track of it all, but there's a lot online. And yeah, I got this invoice, and this invoice was 3 times the amount we'd raised. It was only 300. Oh, well, because so it was just a kick in the gut. I'm like, wow, I've got 3 weeks, and I thought we'd raise the money, and we're not even a third of what we need. It's because the answer, you pay for quality, was what I was given, but also he was working on.
It's frightening.
I know, it's all. I'm holding my head as I'm saying this. It's all insane. Also, he was fixing problems that had occurred following my last surgery, and what he needed to do. And this didn't become clear till I was in the country, because thank goodness we actually raised the funds within 2 weeks over Christmas.
Incredible.
Oh God, I mean, that was the
Is there a particular fundraiser
that
raising person that you could, was somebody who actually held those reins, and because I see that as an incredible feat. Not this single any person.
At the time, no, it's okay. At the time, I had a group of friends, very close friends, who really, like, they ran a lot of my online stuff for me. They kept track of funds coming in. They would take it to the bank. They would manage everything and manage a lot of the online stuff. What often, I mean, I owe my life to them, because there's no way I could have ran that myself. But what often brought in large sums of money was media awareness. So I did a lot of TV. I rang into Jeremy Vine. He was doing a question and answer on, is crowdfunding a form of begging? And it just felt like it was calling to me. And I'm stuck in bed upstairs at my mum's, and I just rang him, and he got me straight on. And he rang me back and did an appeal for me. And other celebrities got on board. Quite a lot of other celebrities got on board. And each time that happened, you know, the ninjas, Jason Manford's ninjas, the Daily Mail reached people who really then tipped the balance in my favour on the last haul, and really, really took care of us and made what was a traumatic journey palatable, you know, manageable, and gave us opportunities as well on that process, on the, you know, the journey in Arizona. When we did get there eventually, they gave us opportunities to make memories together, because these people had the funds to do that and the means to do that. And that is just what what does stand out to me. But altogether, just everybody just really, really pulled together.
Fantastic.
Amazing. And yeah, I got to Arizona, and then this surgeon, very matter-of-factly, sat me and my dad down and said to me, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap your neck. I'm going to remove all of the hardware that's in your neck. Now, I already knew multiple people within my community who died in recent weeks from having this surgery, like from having an attempted, where they remove the hardware out of their neck. So this petrified me. And he said, I'm going to remove the hardware out of your neck. I'm going to snap every vertebrae from just under your skull down to between your shoulder blades. I'm then going to flip you over, slit your throat, and this is his words, put my 2 fingers in this area here, right near your artery. Now, every 15 minutes that you're open here makes you closer to death.
So here, where's that? Because obviously we're audio.
Right near your voice box.
Okay. Yeah.
To the left-hand side. Sorry, I'm not good with my right and left.
Yeah.
To the left-hand side. And so he says, I'm going to do this. I'm then going to put hardware through the front of your spine, through your throat, and fix also some discs which had all come out there, and put more hardware in that area. Stitch you back up, turn you back over, and then use donor tissue to almost make a paste which will turn into bone along your neck, and then put hardware in every vertebrae going down. So he made it very clear to me, we're stretching. Your spinal cord's already been stretched by a few inches over the last few surgeries. This is not what it's created for. And we're stretching it by another at least 2 inches. I mean, I'm 2.5 inches taller now than what I was when we started.
I'm sighing, Sam, because if he said it to you as he did, matter of fact, which is nothing wrong with that, I'm not medical, you cannot be thinking this is going to be easy. And as you said, people within the community that you've now made contact with the same types of problems you had died. You must be thinking, this guy's matter of fact, but am I going to survive this?
I was so I could feel my dad next to me now. I couldn't turn. So I have this bright green hard neck brace on, holding my chin in place, holding my head in place, down to my chest. And I'm gripping onto my walker in front of me. And this man's next to me, and he's saying it's so matter of fact that he's going to snap every vertebrae. I mean, somebody snaps one vertebrae and they're paralyzed.
Exactly.
What? How would I survive this? So I was totally taken aback in the very matter of fact way that it was said to me, and almost angry that it was said like I am just not a human, because at this point I'm feeling a lot of anger at the whole situation. And he leaves the room for a minute because he can see that I'm shaking, I'm jerking, I'm already struggling at being upright, and what he's telling me, I'm dead. I'm not going to survive this. So I speak to my dad and I say, that's it, I'm done. And the dad gets upset and with trying to, and he's saying, no, just listen to him. He's a clever man. He knows what he's talking about. Everything you've suspected, you've not told him, but he's looked and he's found it on these images. He's found it. Like, you've got to trust him. And this man's telling me he can do this.
Mhm.
So we left.
Is he a young fella, Sam?
He is, yeah.
How old would you say is this, the surgeon?
Oh gosh, I'd hate to guess in case he's listening.
No, but, you know.
He's under 40. He's a savant of some kind. Like, he is.
Savant.
He is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not me diagnosing him. He's a genius. He is an incredibly intelligent man. Incredibly intelligent.
Does that give you more confidence in him or less confidence in him in terms of when you say a young fella?
Yeah. The young fellow walking in the room was a shock, because he came in with his registrar, and his registrar was older, so we automatically assumed that must be him. No, my dad did. Now, I'd researched this doctor online. I knew what he looked like. So I knew which one it was. And when he sat down to talk to us, my dad was like, when are we going to speak to the surgeon, kind of thing, do you know? And so we did have a few, you know, you do get laughs amongst the chaos kind of thing. But he was the surgeon, and I explained that to my dad, and we came away, and my dad's taken aback about his age, and I'm taken aback about what he's saying, and we go back to the hotel. Now, I'd been booked in by, there's a lot more of an organised system working through an app with the Mayo Clinic. So you get sent your appointments, you get told where to go. It's not like it was in Washington, where I had to book find and book an anaesthetist and beds and stuff. So we have this system where I'm being told you need to be at this place, then this place, and this place, and this place. And I had to be up like 4 or 5 o'clock every morning, and often wouldn't be home before sunset. And this is like a body that is unable to function 10 minutes upright. So even going from the car into the hospital building, I'd be having seizures, and couldn't communicate anything, but needed to advocate for myself nonetheless, because that's what had saved me so far. And I started to freak out. I wondered if I'd gone to the wrong place. His surgery seemed so aggressive. I went to another hospital and got another opinion there. Barrow Hospital, which is one of the world's top. I believe Muhammad Ali was there during the last few years of his life. And that was an insane hospital, really advanced technology. And I met a few of their surgeons and got more opinions on what was needed. But there was a lot more feeling of rush there. And the surgeon was going on holiday straight afterwards. And I knew I'm complex and this isn't going to work. I need somebody who's going to stick around. In the end, carried on, went with the Mayo, stayed with this surgeon. And just to fast track a bit, so we're in Arizona, we're staying in Airbnb. At this point, I brought my brother out because I'd had to call upon him in Washington, with my dad having a stroke out there, and my mum and dad have got a daughter with special needs, and my children and myself to look after. My brother was my calm, like he reminded me to breathe, just as simple as that. He just reminded me to breathe every time. And he came out, thank gosh, and he came over to be with us. Sorry, I'm forgetting what I'm saying.
Yeah, take your time.
So we get to going through all of these treatments, and at no point had I been asked to pay for the surgery. I had the money ready to pay, but at no point had I been asked to pay. And it's the next morning I'm due to go in for this surgery at I think it's 4 o'clock. I need to be at the hospital, 4 a.m. And I was pushed, I was wheeled to watch the children play in a park. And I remember some strangers coming over and asking if they could pray for me. They didn't know anything about me, but obviously I'm in a wheelchair, so they asked if they could pray for me. And this time I let them. And then on the way home, I got a call off the hospital saying, could you pay the bill for tomorrow's surgery? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm about to get home. When I get home and I'm on the Wi-Fi, I'll ring you back and I'll pay it. And they said, no, it's okay. We'll ring you at 7 or 8 o'clock. So I go home and I've lined up all of, unbeknown to my family, I've lined up all of these gifts and letters in my wardrobe. Should I not come out of hospital, because I was convinced that I wouldn't come out of hospital. Yeah. And I'd made decisions on what would happen if I was brain damaged or on life support. And then you wash yourself in this disinfectant. You have to wash your full body in this stuff that they give you so that you've not got the germs on you, in time for the surgery. So after that point, you can't really be touching people. So I'd also had what I believe was my last touch with my children, my last hugs with my parents, my last everything. And I get this call to pay the bill. And I'm in my bed and everybody else is eating in the dining room. And I got to make this payment and it fails because Barclays Bank didn't recognise this transaction. And we told them it was coming out, but, we're miles away from home. They didn't recognise it. And it's a large amount of money. It's hundreds of thousands. So I said to the guy on the phone, okay, just hang on a second. I'm just going to get onto the bank and then I'll ring you back. And he said, your surgery is cancelled. And I said, no, it's tomorrow. Like, my surgery's tomorrow. It's fine. The money's in the bank. Don't worry about it. And we've got this. And he goes, no, I've been told if there's any issues, this should have been paid already. If there's, and it hadn't, it wasn't supposed to be paid already because there'd been so much up in the air until that point. He said, I'm not to take the money. I'm not to, your surgery's cancelled. So I tried to get out of bed and I remember falling, just collapsing on the floor. And I'm shouting or screaming for my parents. And
you're probably screaming, yeah?
Yeah. And my dad came in and I passed him the phone and I'm shaking and I'm saying, he's cancelling my surgery. Like, what? My surgery's tomorrow. He's cancelling my surgery. It's 6 hours off at this point.
And I guess he's cancelling your surgery politely, saying, sorry, ma'am, but and that type of American stuff. Is that how he's doing it?
Very firm, if I'm honest.
Oh,
it
very
felt
firm.
like,
right. Okay.
It felt like, it later transpired that it felt like it was quite beneficial to them that this surgery was cancelled and delayed. But at that point, I couldn't understand his coldness. Right. He was cold with it. And I am like, I don't think you understand. We've been through all of this. We've paid thousands of pounds on pre-op testing. I'm going to lose it all. This literally cannot happen. My surgeon's not going to be happy. And my dad gets on the phone and my dad's talking to him and my dad starts swearing and shouting and he gets off the call and just shakes his head at me. And I remember looking to Jensen, my eldest, who at the point was 8, 9, and he just dropped to the floor and he's got his back against the wall and he's dropped to the floor and he's got his head in his hands and he's just shaking his head and he's like, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Take your time, Sam. Take your time.
It's like, you're going to die, aren't you? It's too late, Mum. We're already past the time that you had. And just sitting with him and Brooke was cuddling him and not fully understanding and somewhat detached from things. They both cope very differently with emotions. And we all just sat on the floor, couldn't understand it. And I'm trying to ring my surgeon and various other people, managers of the hospital. But at this point, I've also got literally the world watching, waiting to see me go down for surgery the next morning. And we're getting up to midnight in Arizona. So it's late afternoon in England. And I went online and I did a live video just saying, I was a mess.
Literally from your deathbed.
Yeah, literally sat back in the bed in complete and utter shock and just sobbing my surgery's been cancelled. Barclays have messed up, and I'm I've been told by the hospital that Barclays knew this money was going out and I've got the money and I don't know why this is happening and I don't know if they can even fix it or whether they'll ever get me in time or what's going to happen with my pre-op assessments. I've had so many. That's a lot of money we're going to lose. It's about money as well, Yeah. I phoned the hospital and I warned them, like, people are watching worldwide. Like, people have paid for this around the world, and I've got to tell them that this is cancelled, and there could be a backlash. It wasn't a threat; it was a genuine, like, please be aware. And next morning, I wake up and I was just we were all just zombified, you know.
Yeah.
And I get a call from somebody at the hospital. Could you please control your husband? Never had a husband. I don't know what you're talking about. Could you please control your husband? Your husband keeps ringing up trying to get information from the hospital about your cancelled surgery. We've had so many calls, like, we can't be dealing with this all morning. We've got a hospital to run. And I was like, I don't have a husband. You should know this. This is all on my records. Like, do not give any information away. I don't know whether it was people. I'd imagine some of it were journalists, some of it was people. My phone was going crazy, and I had to do multiple media interviews.
I'm going to stop you right there, Sam, because again, I think we're going to have to come back to this, because this then leads you through to where we are now.
Yeah.
And I think that we wouldn't do justice to what comes next if we just kept rolling. So I want people to digest where you are at that particular time, when your life is hanging on a string and the people who are meant to save you are basically saying, no money, no time. Thanks again for listening to part 3. As I said, I've never done this before. I've never extended a show to include so many different episodes with the same interviewer on a subject. But I think this encompasses so many different areas that we all need to understand: medical, finance, the levels and limits of financial knowledge, how the courts, particularly in private matters, non-criminal matters, function in civil cases, and how people can, in a civil case, just decide not to pay. So, and also how it's very, very clear to me that the more money you've got is the greater opportunity you have to win in a civil court. So thanks for listening again, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you again next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes, and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.